Admiral Vector stood on the command deck of the Crithian Imperial flagship, Eternal Dominance, and watched the primitive human vessels drift through space like lost children. The Crithian Empire had conquered 47 star systems in 300 years of calculated warfare, and this moment should have been no different than the others. "Scan complete," his tactical officer announced, with forearms folded in the traditional gesture of certainty. 5 colony vessels, carrying approximately 50,000 humans total, and minimal defensive capabilities. Vector nodded his elongated head and activated the translation matrix. "Attention human vessels, and you are hereby ordered to surrender your ships and submit to Crithian authority, and failure to comply will result in immediate destruction." The response came after a brief delay, and a human face appeared on the screen, with skin the color of dark earth and eyes that seemed almost amused. "And we got your message, but here's the thing. We're good." Vector felt his primary heart skip in confusion. "You do not understand, and this is not a negotiation, but a statement of inevitable reality." The human female on the screen smiled in a way that showed her teeth. "Oh, we understand perfectly, and you want us to give up everything we have because you have bigger guns. But see, that's not really how we do things." "Then you choose annihilation," Vector said and signaled to his weapons officer. "Destroy the cargo vessel as a demonstration." The Crithian plasma cannons fired with mathematical precision, and the unmanned human cargo ship exploded in a brilliant flash of white and orange fire. Vector waited for the fear and the panic, and the inevitable surrender that always followed such demonstrations. Instead, the human woman's smile grew wider. "Okay then, and I guess we're doing this." She looked off screen. "Martinez, what's our acceleration looking like?" "Like?" Another voice called back. "We can hit 0.7 light speed in about 40 minutes. "Perfect," the woman said, and turned back to face Vector. "Hey, Admiral Guy, and you just killed a bunch of our supplies, so we figured we'd return the favor and see you soon." The transmission cut, and Vector felt confusion ripple through his logical mind. "Tactical, what are the humans doing?" "Sir, the lead colony ship is accelerating directly toward us, but at their current trajectory, they will merely pass our position unless—" The tactical officer's voice changed pitch. "Sir, they are not decelerating, and they are aiming directly at our flagship." "Impossible," Vector said. "That would mean their own destruction." "Yes, sir, but they are continuing to accelerate." For the first time in his 200-year military career, Admiral Vector felt something the Crithian language had no proper word for, and humans would have called it dread. New Hope contained 15,000 sleeping humans in cryopods, and 200 crew members who were now strapping themselves into crash couches. Captain Maria Reyes checked her harness one final time and looked at her navigation officer. "Martinez, you locked in?" "Locked and loaded, Captain," he replied with a grim smile. "We're gonna hit them right in their stupid flagship." "Good," Maria said, and opened a ship-wide channel. "Attention all crew. This is Captain Reyes, and you all volunteered for a one-way colony mission, and you all knew the risks, but I doubt any of you expected this particular ending." She paused and felt the weight of what came next. "Those alien bastards just killed our cargo ship, and now they expect us to surrender and give them everything we worked for. But I say, screw that. And if we're dying today, then we're taking them with us. And anyone who wants to object can speak now." Silence filled the channel, and then someone started laughing, and then someone else. And within seconds, the entire crew was howling with defiant laughter. "That's what I thought," Maria said. "Helmsman, take us in." The New Hope accelerated to 70% light speed and became a kinetic weapon more powerful than any bomb humanity had ever created. Vector watched the colony ship approach on his tactical display and ordered evasive maneuvers, but capital ships were not designed for quick movements. "All hands brace for impact," he screamed into the ship-wide communications. But he knew it would not matter. The new hope struck the eternal dominance with the force of a dying star. The human colony ship vaporized instantly, but its mass and velocity tore through the Crithian flagship like a bullet through flesh. 40,000 Crithian crew members died in the first 3 seconds, as the ship broke apart in a cascading explosion that lit up the darkness of space. Reyes died without fear, and her last thought was a simple one: worth it. Admiral Vector survived because his command deck was in a section that separated from the main hull before the catastrophic failure. But he floated in an escape pod and watched the debris field that had been the pride of the Crithian fleet. His communication officer contacted the remaining ships. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the other human vessels," his officer reported. "Play it," Vector said quietly. The same human woman from before appeared on screen, and she was no longer smiling. "You destroyed one of our ships, and Captain Reyes destroyed yours. Now we're even. But here's what you need to understand. We're all going to die eventually, and every human on these colony ships signed up knowing we might not make it. But if you think that makes us weak, you've made a fatal mistake." She leaned closer to the camera. "We're not afraid of dying. We're only afraid of living without freedom. And if you come at us again, then we'll do the same thing, and we'll keep doing it until either you're dead or we're dead. And honestly, we're fine with either outcome." The transmission ended, and Vector floated in the silence of his escape pod and tried to process what had just happened. The Crithian Empire had fought dozens of species, and all of them eventually surrendered when faced with overwhelming force, because all intelligent life valued survival above all else. These humans had just proven that assumption wrong. Back on Earth, the military command received the distress signal from the colony ships, and the news of the Crithian attack, and the admirals and generals gathered to discuss strategy. General Hammond looked at the psychological profiles of available officers and shook his head. "The Crithians think they're fighting a war, but what they don't understand is that we're not sending our best people out there." Asked. "I mean, we're sending the ones who volunteered for suicide missions, and the ones who got court-martialed but were too useful to fully discharge, and the ones who scare our own psychiatrists." Hammond pulled up a file, like this one. "Colonel Sarah Chen, no relation to you, Admiral, and she led an unauthorized raid into enemy territory during the resource wars and got her entire command structure killed, but also won the battle." "She's unstable," Admiral Chen said. "Exactly," Hammond replied with a cold smile. "And that's exactly what we need. And the Crithians fight with honor and logic and mathematical precision. But Chen fights like a cornered animal with nothing to lose." "So we're weaponizing our worst impulses," another general said. "No," Hammond corrected. "We're weaponizing the people who already have those impulses, and the ones we usually keep on a tight leash. But now we're taking the leash off and pointing them at the enemy." Sarah Chen received her orders, and a ship and 3,000 soldiers who had been similarly flagged as psychologically unsuitable for standard operations. When she read the mission briefing, she laughed out loud. "They want us to fight aliens who follow rules and honor codes." She looked at her assembled troops. "Boys and girls, I think we're about to teach the galaxy what happens when you poke the crazy ape." Her soldiers cheered, and Admiral Vector, floating in his rescue pod, had no idea that his worst nightmare was about to accelerate toward Crithian space. The war had begun, and the Empire would soon learn that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology or numbers, but the simple fact that some humans genuinely did not care if they lived or died, as long as they took the enemy with them. 6 months had passed since the Crithian Empire declared war on humanity, and the High Command of the Empire gathered in their war room to analyze what should have been a simple conquest. Supreme Commander Thekral activated the holographic display, and 3-dimensional maps of battle sites filled the air, with red markers for Crithian victories and blue markers for human defeats. "As you can see," Thekral announced to the assembled commanders, We have won every single tactical engagement against the humans. Their technology is inferior, and their numbers are smaller, and by all logical analysis they should have surrendered months ago. War Minister Dekthon touched one of the red markers with a long finger. Then why are we losing resources at 3 times the projected rate? Thekral's expression darkened. Because the humans do not fight like any species we have encountered before. And they do not retreat when logic demands it. Survival in any measurable way. He pulled up footage from the Battle of Proxima Station, where 300 human soldiers had held a fortified position against 15,000 Krithian troops for 72 hours. "Watch this," Thekral said, and played the recording. The human soldiers fought with a ferocity that made the Krithian commanders shift uncomfortably, and when ammunition ran low, they used blades, and when the blades broke, they used their own bodies as weapons. One human female soldier had tackled a Krithian warrior off a cliff, and laughed the entire way down. "They are insane," Minister Dekvan whispered. "No," came a voice from the back of the room. "They are something worse." Intelligence Officer Rekthar stepped forward and activated his own data display. "I have spent 6 months studying human military history, and what I have discovered should concern us all greatly." He showed images of ancient Earth battles. These creatures have been fighting wars against themselves for their entire recorded history, and not for resources or territory alone, but for ideas and concepts and beliefs. "Absurd," one admiral said. "No species fights to extinction over abstractions." "Humans do," Rekthar replied. "They have a concept called religion that they have killed billions of their own kind over, and they have political ideologies that led to wars lasting decades, and they have a history of something they call martyrdom, where individuals willingly die to inspire others." He pulled up footage of human kamikaze pilots from their Second World War. These pilots flew explosive-laden aircraft directly into enemy ships, and they called it an honor. And this was not isolated, but an organized military strategy. The room fell silent, and Rekthar continued. "They have siege battles, where entire cities starve to death rather than surrender. And they have last stands, where small groups fought overwhelming odds, with 0 chance of survival simply to delay the enemy," Thekral asked. "But what is the tactical benefit?" "That is the problem," Rekthar said quietly. "There often is none by our standards. But humans do not calculate cost-benefit the same way we do, and they factor in morale and symbolic victories and revenge in ways our computers cannot predict." At that moment, reports came in of a new human operation on the Krithian colony world of Vecthos Prime. Colonel Saracen stood in the drop pod with 299 other soldiers and felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that kept her awake at night. "Attention, soldiers," she said over the comm. "We are about to do something that Command officially told us not to do. And they said it was too risky, and they said we would all die, and they're probably right." She checked her rifle. "But here's what they don't understand. We were all supposed to die months ago, and some of us were supposed to die years ago in courts-martial, or prison, or psychiatric wards, but instead they gave us guns and pointed us at aliens." Private Martinez laughed. "So what's the mission, Colonel?" "The mission is simple," Shen replied. "We drop onto Vecthos Prime, and we hold the industrial sector for 72 hours, and that cuts off the Krithian fleet's main supply line. And after 72 hours, either reinforcements arrive, or we're all dead." "And what are the odds of reinforcements?" someone asked. "About 12%, Shen said honestly. "I'll take those odds," Martinez said, and the other soldiers howled their agreement. The drop pods launched, and 300 humans fell through the atmosphere like meteors toward a planet defended by 50,000 Krithian soldiers. The Krithian planetary commander watched the drop pods descend on his tactical display. "Only 300 soldiers," he mused. "They must be a special reconnaissance unit." His assessment officer checked the data. Intelligence identifies the unit commander as Colonel Sarah Chen, and her psychological profile indicates severe antisocial tendencies and disregard for authority, and multiple counts of excessive force during peacetime operations. Why would Earth send such a damaged officer? That is unclear, sir. What the Crithian commander did not understand was that Earth had not sent Chen despite her psychological issues, but because of them. The humans hit the ground and immediately began fortifying the industrial sector with a brutal efficiency that bordered on artistic. Chen set up her command post in a factory control room and looked at her tactical map. Martinez, take Alpha Squad and wire every bridge with explosives, and Rodriguez, take Beta Squad and set up kill zones at the main approaches, and everyone else with me, and we're turning this factory into a fortress. Colonel, Lieutenant Webb asked, what about civilians? Replied, there are Crithian civilians in this sector. Chen looked at Webb with eyes that contained no warmth. Webb, those civilians work in factories that build weapons that kill our people, and if they run, they can go, and if they stay, they're enemy assets. And do you have a problem with that assessment? Webb swallowed hard. No, ma'am. Good, Chen said, because we didn't come here to make friends, and we came here to break things and kill the enemy, and hold this position until we die or win, and preferably both. The Crithian counterattack began at dawn, and 15,000 soldiers advanced on the industrial sector, expecting quick victory. Instead, they walked into a nightmare. Chen had turned every street into a death trap, and every building into a firing position, and every corner into an ambush site. When the Crithians used heavy weapons, the humans simply retreated deeper into the factory complex, and collapsed tunnels behind them. Crithians sent in infiltration units. The humans hunted them down with thermal sensors and blades. After 24 hours, the Crithian commander looked at his casualty reports and felt his confidence crumble. How are 300 humans causing this much damage? His tactical officer pulled up battle footage. Sir, they are not fighting defensively, and they are actively hunting our forces, even while surrounded. The footage showed Chen's squad ambushing a Crithian patrol at night. What disturbed the commander most was the sound of human laughter during the firefight. They are enjoying this, he whispered. At hour 48, the humans still held the industrial sector, despite losing over half their forces. Chen stood on a rooftop covered in blood, both human and alien, and called in artillery strikes on her own position when Crithian forces got too close. Colonel, Martinez said, breathing heavily, we're down to 12% ammunition and 30% personnel. Then we switch to blades and rocks if necessary, Chen replied. We hold for 24 more hours or we die trying, and either way the Empire learns that attacking humans costs more than they can afford. At hour 72 exactly, human reinforcements arrived and broke through the Crithian lines, but they found only 12 human survivors standing in the ruins of the industrial sector. Colonel Chen walked out of the smoke with a broken arm and burns covering half her face, and when the rescue commander asked if she was okay, she just laughed. We held, she said simply. Now we need to do it again somewhere else. The Crithian Empire lost Vecthos Prime 3 weeks later, because the industrial sector never recovered from those 72 hours. Back on the Imperial homeworld, Thekral presented his analysis to the High Council. Our war computers have calculated the projected timeline for human extinction at current combat rates. And? The Empress demanded. 800 years, Thekral said quietly. But the Empire's economy will collapse in approximately 200 years at current resource expenditure rates. The Empress felt fear grip her hearts. You are saying we cannot win this war? She asked. I am saying, Thekral replied, that the humans do not need to win battles. They only need to make each battle cost us more than we can sustain, and they are very good at dying in expensive ways. The room fell silent, as the Empire realized they had not declared war on a species, but on a concept: humanity's absolute refusal to surrender regardless of the cost. In her medical bay, Colonel Sarah Chen read her mission reports and smiled, because she knew something the Empire did not. Earth had not sent their best soldiers to this war. They had sent the ones who were too dangerous to keep at home, and the ones who scared the generals, and the ones who woke up every day looking for a fight. Reason to fight. And those were exactly the kind of people who could not be defeated, because they were already okay with losing everything, as long as they took the enemy down with them. The war entered its 14th month, and something had changed in the Crithian Empire that no computer could quantify and no analyst could properly explain. Fear. Not the logical concern for survival that all species experienced, but something deeper and more primal that spread through the military like a virus. Captain Zeknal of the Crithian cruiser Honor's Light felt it every time his ship approached a human position, because he knew the humans would not surrender, and would not retreat, and would definitely try something that defied all tactical logic. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, "we are detecting a human distress beacon in Grid 7. Zeknal felt his secondary hearts accelerate. "What kind of distress?" "Life support failure on a small transport, and minimal life signs. They are requesting immediate rescue." Every instinct told Zeknal this was wrong. Run full-spectrum scans, and check for weapon signatures and energy buildups. And anything unusual. The sensor officer worked for several minutes. "Scans show nothing, sir, and the transport appears genuinely disabled, and life signs are fading." Zeknal knew the honorable thing was to offer aid even to enemies, but he had learned that humans had no honor. Deploy rescue shuttle, but maintain maximum distance and weapons hot. The rescue shuttle approached the drifting human transport, and Crithian medical teams prepared to board and render aid according to the ancient protocols of civilized warfare. The transport's airlock opened, and a human female stepped out, wearing a smile and a vest covered in explosives. "Hi there," she said over the open channel. "Thanks for coming to our party." The transport detonated along with the rescue shuttle, and the explosion sent shrapnel into the Honor's Light's shields, and while the cruiser survived, the psychological impact was worse than any physical damage. Colonel Sarah Chen watched the footage from her command ship and nodded with satisfaction. "Good work, Rodriguez, and how many ships fell for it?" "7 in the past week," Rodriguez reported, "and the Crithian rescue response time has increased by 300% because they're scared it's a trap." "Excellent," Chen said. "Now their actual casualties will die because they're too paranoid to send help." Lieutenant Webb looked uncomfortable. "Colonel, isn't using distress signals against the rules of war?" Chen turned to face him with eyes like ice. "Webb, the Crithians tried to exterminate every human colony they found, and they didn't offer us surrender terms, and they opened fire without warning. And now you're worried about rules?" She leaned closer. "The only rule that matters is win or die, and I prefer winning." Across human-controlled space, similar operations unfolded, and Captain Marcus Webb led a strike force that captured Prince Dektar of the Crithian royal family during a diplomatic mission gone wrong. Marcus Webb had been a colonel in Earth's military before a court-martial for excessive force during a peacekeeping mission, and the official record said he had executed prisoners, but the unofficial truth was that Marcus simply did not understand the concept of mercy when it came to enemies. He sat across from the Crithian prince in a bare interrogation room and smiled. "Your Highness, welcome to human hospitality. I demand to be treated according to," the prince began. "Yeah, I'm gonna stop you right there," Marcus interrupted. "You see, we're not really big on the whole prisoner treatment protocol thing, and mostly because your people didn't offer that option to our colonists. I had nothing to do with those decisions." "Don't care," Marcus said, "but here's what we are going to do, and you're going to watch some videos and learn a little bit about the species you decided to fight." For the next 6 hours, Prince Dektar watched footage from Earth's wars, and the Somme, and Stalingrad, and Hiroshima, and Rwanda, and Syria, and the images of human cruelty toward other humans, made him physically ill. "Why would you show me this?" the prince asked weakly. "Because you need to understand something," Marcus replied. "Everything your people have done to us is amateur hour compared to what we do to each other. And you thought you were fighting a war, but you're really just giving us a new target for violence we used to direct inward. You are monsters." "Maybe," Marcus agreed, "but we're your monsters now, and you created us by attacking our colonies." The prince was returned to the empire 3 days later, and he went immediately to the empress with a report that changed everything. "Your Majesty," he said with trembling voice, "the humans are not like other species, and they do not fight for rational goals, and they have spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. They fought wars that consumed hundreds of millions of lives over ideologies and concepts." The empress listened to her nephew describe things he had seen, and the summary of human conflicts that made the Crithian-human war look like a minor skirmish. "They showed you this to frighten you," she said. "No," the prince replied. "They showed me this to make me understand that this war is not special to them, and it is just another entry in a very long list of conflicts, and they are good at this because they practice constantly." That same week, Chen launched her most audacious operation yet, and her ships approached a Crithian supply convoy and broadcast a message on all frequencies. "Attention Crithian vessels, this is Colonel Sarah Chen of Earth's Expeditionary Forces, and we have poisoned your water supplies on 14 colony worlds with a slow-acting neurotoxin, and symptoms will begin appearing in approximately 30 days, and the antidote exists. To find the contaminated worlds first, and good luck." The transmission ended, and the Crithian High Command went into immediate crisis mode. "Which 14 worlds?" Supreme Commander Thekral demanded. Intelligence Officer Rekthar pulled up colonial water system reports. "Sir, we are analyzing all colony worlds, but there are 47 possibilities, and testing each system thoroughly will take months." "Then begin immediately," Thekral ordered, "and quarantine any suspicious findings." The truth that Rekthar discovered 2 weeks later made everything worse. Only 2 worlds had actually been contaminated, and the rest of Chen's message had been pure psychological warfare. But the damage was done, and the Empire had already begun quarantining 14 worlds based on preliminary sensor readings, and the panic had spread to civilian populations, and riots broke out on 6 planets when quarantine measures were enforced. The economic impact of the false flag operation cost the Empire more than a major military defeat, and all from a lie told by one human colonel. On the Imperial homeworld, 3 admirals committed ritual suicide rather than face continued combat operations against human forces, and their farewell messages all said the same thing: there is no honor in fighting enemies who have no rules. The Empress read these messages and felt something she had never experienced before: helplessness. "How do we fight an enemy like this?" she asked her council. "We cannot," War Minister Dekvan replied quietly, "not in any way that preserves what we are. And if we adopt their tactics, we become like them. And if we maintain our honor, we lose slowly. And there is no third option." In human space, General Hammond reviewed the latest battle reports and smiled. The Crithians are starting to crack, and Chen's operations are costing them more in morale than in actual casualties. "Warfare we've ever signed," Admiral Chen pointed out. "I know," Hammond said, "and that's exactly why we sent her. And the Crithians thought they were fighting Earth's military, but they're really fighting the people we usually court-martial and lock up." "What happens when the war ends?" someone asked. "What do we do with people like Sarah Chen and Marcus Webb?" Hammond's smile faded. "That's a problem for future us. And right now they're winning us a war we had no business surviving." Back in her command ship, Colonel Chen received a message from Captain Webb about his successful prisoner exchange and subsequent ceasefire violation. "Webb, you magnificent bastard," she said, laughing. "They actually believed you would honor the ceasefire." "I told them I was a war criminal," Webb replied over the channel. "I don't know what they expected." "They expected logic and honor and rules," Chen said, but we don't have any of that, and we just have anger and creativity and a complete willingness to die if it means taking them with us. She looked at her tactical display, showing Krithian forces pulling back from 3 contested systems. And you know what? And that's enough to win. The Empire's intelligence networks intercepted a human military transmission that should have been encrypted, but seemed almost deliberately left open, and the message was simple and terrifying. Command, this is Recon 7, and we have confirmed that Earth is not sending reinforcements, and they are sending more punishment battalions, and penal legions, and court-martialed officers, and how many psychologically unstable soldiers does Earth have? The response chilled every Krithian who heard it. Enough, and Earth has 8 billion people, and we're only sending the ones we don't want back. Prince Dekthar presented this intelligence to the Empress. Your Majesty, we are not fighting Earth's best warriors, and we are fighting their criminals, and they're unstable. And they're expendable. And if these are the ones they throw away, then what are the ones they keep like? The Empress had no answer, because for the first time in Krithian history, they had encountered a species that weaponized its own dysfunction and pointed it outward like a gun. And the truly terrifying realization was that it was working. 18 months into the war, and the Krithian Empire controlled more territory on paper than when the conflict began. But every soldier and every civilian knew the truth. They were losing. Lieutenant Kexval stood guard duty at Supply Depot Gamma 7 and tried not to think about the stories he had heard from veterans about human infiltration tactics. You seem nervous, his squadmate Jekthos observed. I am not nervous, Kexval lied. I am simply maintaining proper vigilance. The truth was that every Krithian soldier had become paranoid because the humans did not fight like soldiers, but like ghosts, and like demons, and like something that belonged in nightmare folklore rather than tactical briefings. At 0300 hours, the depot's sensors detected nothing unusual. But by 0400 hours, 3 human logistics officers had infiltrated the compound and were working their way through the supply storage. Sergeant Patricia Morrison moved silently through the depot warehouse and checked her scanner for Krithian patrol patterns, while Corporal Davies and Private Hu worked on the supply crates. How's it looking? Morrison whispered into her comm. Perfect, Davies replied. They organize everything by delivery date, so we can hit 6 months of supplies in one go. Remember the plan, Morrison said. We're not destroying anything. Hu grinned in the darkness, just making it better. They worked for 2 hours and carefully injected measured doses of a compound that Earth's Chemical Warfare Division had spent 3 months developing, and it was not lethal and not immediately detectable, and absolutely guaranteed to cause vivid hallucinations after prolonged exposure. By dawn, the 3 humans had vanished and left no trace of their presence, except for microscopic punctures in supply containers that held food and water and medical supplies. 3 weeks later, Krithian Forward Operating Base Theta 9 reported unusual symptoms among its soldiers, and visual distortions, and paranoia, and several incidents of soldiers firing on their own units. The base commander reported to Central Command. We are instituting immediate quarantine protocols. Within days, 17 more bases reported similar symptoms, and the Krithian military supply chain ground to a halt, as every shipment required extensive testing before distribution. Supreme Commander Thekral read the reports and felt rage building. How did the humans contaminate so many supplies? We do not know, sir, his logistics officer admitted, but chemical analysis suggests the contamination occurred at multiple depot locations over several weeks, and the humans must have infiltrated our supply chain with deep cover operatives. Find them, Thekral ordered. I want every supply depot locked down and every worker screened, and I want these humans. The search lasted 3 months and found no human infiltrators, because Morrison and her team had already moved to their next operation, and this time targeting food supplies on civilian colony worlds. The psychological impact of not knowing which supplies were safe created a cascade effect across the Empire, and soldiers refused to eat rations without chemical testing, and civilians hoarded uncontaminated food, and the economy buckled under the strain. Colonel Sarah Chen sat in her command center and reviewed the latest intelligence reports with something like pride. Morrison's team hit 23 supply depots and contaminated approximately 40% of the Empire's forward logistics, and the Crithians are now testing everything, which has slowed their operational tempo by 60%. And we only actually contaminated about 12% of what they think we did, Lieutenant Webb added. Exactly, Chen said. More damage than actual attacks, and the Crithians are spending resources fighting phantoms. She activated her communication array and broadcast on all Crithian military frequencies. Good morning, Crithian Empire, and this is Colonel Chen with your daily update. We have poisoned your water on 14 worlds, and maybe we have contaminated your food supplies, and maybe we have infiltrated your bases with operatives who look like you and sound like you and maybe are you. How would you even know? She paused for effect. Sleep well tonight, and drink that water, and eat that food and trust your fellow soldiers, and I'm sure everything is fine. The transmission ended, and across Crithian-controlled space, thousands of soldiers looked at their rations with suspicion. On the Imperial homeworld, 3 more admirals requested retirement, citing irreconcilable philosophical differences with current operational doctrine. And the real reason was that they could not handle the stress of fighting an enemy that weaponized uncertainty. Captain Marcus Webb, meanwhile, had been conducting his own operations, and his specialty was psychological warfare through strategic brutality. His ship intercepted a Crithian diplomatic vessel, traveling under flags of truce to negotiate prisoner exchanges. And Webb honored the agreement and returned 50 Crithian prisoners exactly as promised. Then 12 hours after the exchange was complete, Webb's forces attacked a Crithian fleet that had escorted the diplomatic vessel and destroyed 3 cruisers before vanishing. The Crithian ambassador, who had conducted the exchange, sent an outraged message. Captain Webb, you violated the ceasefire, and this is a war crime, and you agreed to peace negotiations. Webb's response was broadcast on open channels. Did I? And I don't recall agreeing to anything. And I'm a court-martialed officer who was sent here specifically because I don't follow rules, and what did you expect? The ambassador tried to appeal to human command, but Earth's official response was simple. Captain Webb is operating under broad discretionary authority, and we cannot be held responsible for actions taken by officers we have officially condemned. The message was clear. Earth had sent their wolves, and then cut the leash. Webb's violation of ceasefire protocols had a calculated purpose, and now every Crithian diplomatic initiative was viewed with suspicion, because if humans could not be trusted to honor agreements, then what was the point of negotiating? The Empire's diplomatic corps sent a formal complaint to every neutral species in known space. The humans are violating every convention of civilized warfare, and they use distress calls to lure rescue ships, and they poison supplies, and they violate ceasefires, and they must be stopped. But the neutral species had been watching the war, and they saw something the Crithians did not. Humanity was winning. And if breaking rules was how one defeated a superior enemy, then perhaps the rules needed reconsideration. Colonel Chen launched her final psychological operation of the month, and she had her communications officers hack into Crithian civilian news networks and broadcast a simple message. People of the Crithian Empire and your government started this war, and they attacked our colonies without warning, and they killed civilians and destroyed our ships, and now they are losing, and your military is collapsing, and your economy is failing, and your admirals are committing suicide rather than face us. She leaned closer to the camera. And here is what you need to know. We are not your enemy's equals, and we are your enemy's nightmares. And we do not fight for territory or resources, and we fight because you made us angry, and there is no greater danger in the universe than angry humans with nothing to lose. The broadcast was shut down within minutes. Millions of Crithian civilians had already seen it, and the message spread through underground channels and social networks. Riots broke out on 5 worlds, and protesters demanded the government end the war before humanity decided to escalate beyond military targets. The Empress convened an emergency session of the High Council. "We cannot continue this war. Your Majesty, we still hold military superiority," Supreme Commander Theckrell protested. "On paper," the Empress replied, "but our soldiers are afraid, and our supply chains are compromised, and our people are losing faith, and most importantly, the humans are not getting weaker, and they are getting more creative." War Minister Dekvan pulled up the latest casualty projections. "At current rates, we can sustain operations for approximately 18 more months before total economic collapse, and the humans can sustain operations indefinitely because they do not care about losses." "Then we have no choice," the Empress said. Empress said quietly, "Begin peace negotiations." "Your Majesty," Prince Dekthar said carefully, "who will we negotiate with? And the humans do not seem to have a unified command structure, and every officer operates independently." "Find whoever is in charge," the Empress ordered, "and offer them whatever they want, and this war must end." Intelligence Officer Rekthar reviewed the human command structure and made a disturbing discovery. "Your Majesty, the humans do have a central command, but they have deliberately sent their most unstable officers to the front lines, and the ones conducting negotiations will be the same ones who have been violating every rule of warfare." "Surely they will not send war criminals to peace talks," someone said. "That is exactly who they will send," Rekthar replied, "because those are the only humans the Empire has been dealing with, and as far as the galaxy is concerned, those people represent humanity now. Settle over her." "Then we are negotiating with monsters." "Yes," Rekthar agreed, "but they are monsters we created by attacking their colonies, and now we must find a way to make peace with them." Across human space, General Hammond received word that the Crithians wanted to negotiate surrender terms. "Send Chen and Webb," he ordered. "Sir, they are both flagged for psychological evaluation, and Chen is under investigation for war crimes, and Webb is literally a convicted criminal." "I know," Hammond said, "but they are exactly what we need, because the Crithians need to understand that the people who fought this war are the people who will dictate the peace, and there is no one else coming to save them." Colonel Sarah Chen and Captain Marcus Webb received their orders, and both smiled, because they knew exactly what it meant. "They are sending us to peace talks," Webb said, "the people they usually try to keep away from diplomats. Because we won them the war," Chen replied, "and now they want us to win them the peace." "Should we be nice?" Webb asked mockingly. "Not even a little bit," Chen laughed. "Not even a little bit." The Crithian Imperial Palace had stood for 3,000 years and had witnessed countless diplomatic negotiations, but it had never hosted anything quite like this. Empress Kethara sat on her throne and watched 7 humans walk into the Grand Hall, and none of them wore proper diplomatic attire, and none of them showed even basic courtesy. Colonel Sarah Chen led the group, and she wore a combat uniform still stained with blood. And behind her, Captain Marcus Webb smiled like a predator, and 5 other human officers followed, and each one carried the reputation of someone who should have been imprisoned rather than promoted. "Your Majesty," Chen said without bowing, "you wanted to talk, and so let's talk." The Empress felt her diplomatic advisors shift uncomfortably at the breach of protocol, but she maintained composure. "Colonel Chen and Captain Webb, and thank you for agreeing to meet, and the Empire wishes to discuss terms for ending this conflict." "Surrender terms," Webb said bluntly. "We prefer to call it a negotiated settlement." "Call it whatever helps you sleep at night," Chen replied, "but let's be clear about what happened here. And you attacked our colonies without provocation, and you killed thousands of our civilians, and you started a war you were certain you would win, and now you're losing, and badly. Supreme Commander Thekral spoke up. "We have won the majority of tactical engagements." Chen laughed, and the sound echoed through the hall like breaking glass. "You've won battles, and congratulations, and you've also bankrupted your economy, and traumatized your military, and lost the faith of your people, and turned your empire into a paranoid wreck that tests its own food supply." She walked closer to the throne. "Every tactical victory cost you 3 times what you could afford, and we learned that from our own history, and it's called asymmetric warfare, and the strong enemy bleeds slowly until they collapse, and congratulations on being the strong enemy." "What are your terms?" the Empress asked quietly. Chen pulled out a datapad. "First, an immediate withdrawal from all contested systems, and second, and dismantling of all forward military installations within 50 light-years of human space, and third, and reparations for destroyed colonies to be paid over 20 years, and fourth, and most importantly, you will accept permanent human observers in your military command structure." "Observers?" War Minister Dekvan said. "You mean hostages to ensure compliance?" "We mean exactly what we said," Webb replied. "Observers and people who will watch everything you do and report back to Earth. And because we need to make sure you never forget what happens when you attack humanity." Prince Dekthar leaned forward. "These terms are outrageous, and you are treating us as conquered subjects rather than negotiating partners." "You're right," Chen agreed. "Conquered subjects, and you just haven't admitted it yet. And your economy is failing, and your military is broken, and your people are rioting, and you have no leverage. And you lost this war the moment Captain Reyes flew her colony ship into your flagship." She gestured to Webb. "My colleague here has a theory about why you lost. And Marcus, would you like to share?" Webb stepped forward. "The problem with your empire is that you fight wars the civilized way, and with rules and honor and calculated risk-benefit analysis. And you probably win most of your wars because most species are like you." He smiled without warmth. "But humans are not like you, and we have been fighting each other for thousands of years, and we have refined warfare into an art form, and we know every dirty trick, and every psychological exploit, and every way to make war more expensive than our enemies can afford. And more importantly," Chen added, "you made one critical error in your assessment of humanity. And you thought the soldiers you fought were our best warriors, and our elite forces, and our top commanders." The room fell silent. "They weren't," Chen continued. "Earth sent me, and Webb and everyone else in this room, because we were too dangerous to keep at home. And I have psychological evaluations that classify me as having antisocial personality disorder. And Webb was court-martialed for executing prisoners, and Johnson over there was dishonorably discharged for excessive force. And we are literally the people Earth wanted to get rid of." She let that sink in before continuing. "So when you ask what happens if you refuse our terms, and when you wonder if you can restart hostilities, and when you calculate whether you can win a second war against humanity, then remember this: you have been fighting our criminals, and are psychologically unstable, and are expendable, and you lost. Now imagine what happens if Earth sends the soldiers they actually want to keep." Empress felt something cold grip her hearts. "You are saying this was not your full strength?" "Not even close," Webb said. "Earth has 8 billion people, and we sent maybe a few 100,000 to fight you, and most of them were volunteers who wanted to die in interesting ways, and that should terrify you." Chen pulled up a holographic display showing human military statistics. "Our homeworld maintains standing armies in the hundreds of millions, and we have weapons we did not use because they were too destructive, and we have tactics we did not employ because they were unnecessary, and we beat you with our rejects and our unwanted and our criminally insane. What do you want from us?" the Empress asked, and her voice carried genuine fear. "We want you to remember," Chen said simply. "We want your children to learn what happens when you attack humanity, and we want your military academies to teach case studies of this war. and we want every species in the galaxy to know that humans are not to be trifled with." She leaned on the throne's armrest. "We want you to be terrified of us forever." War Minister Dekvon stood abruptly. "This is not peace but continued warfare through fear." "Yes," Chen agreed, "and that's exactly the point. And if you're afraid of us, then you won't attack us again, and fear is cheaper than actual war, and for both of us." The negotiations continued for 3 days, and the Crithian Empire agreed to every human demand because they had no choice. The final treaty was signed in the same grand hall, and the Empress affixed her seal to the document and looked at Chen. "I hope you are satisfied with what you have wrought." "Not particularly," Chen admitted. "Satisfaction would have been if you never attacked our colonies, and if Captain Reyes was still alive, with her 15,000 colonists, and if this war never happened." She picked up the signed treaty. "But since you did attack, and since people did die, since this war did happen, then yes, we are satisfied that you will never forget the cost," Webb added. "And if you think we were harsh, then consider that we showed more mercy than you showed our colonists. And we could have burned your worlds, and salted the earth, and hunted your people to extinction. And we chose not to, because unlike you, we are actually capable of restraint when we want to be." The human delegation left the palace and boarded their ship, and as they departed Crithian space, Chen looked at Webb. "Do you think they learned their lesson?" "If they didn't, then nothing will teach them," Webb replied, "but I think we made our point." "Good," Chen said, "because I'm tired and I want to go home." "You think they'll let us back on Earth?" Webb asked. "We're not exactly welcome anymore." Chen laughed bitterly. "Probably not, and we're useful in war, but dangerous in peace. And people like us never get to go home, because we're too good at fighting and too broken for normal life." "Then what do we do?" "We find the next war," Chen said, "because that's all we're good for." 10 years passed, and the Crithian Empire recovered slowly. And the war became history, and history became legend, and legend became the nightmare story that parents told children who misbehaved. "Be good, or the humans will come," became a common saying among Crithian youth. The Empire maintained its treaty obligations, and paid reparations, and accepted human observers, and rebuilt their military with new doctrines that emphasized avoiding conflict with species that demonstrated high tolerance for casualties. Supreme Commander Thekral retired, and wrote a military analysis that became required reading in every academy, "The Humans of the Retaliation War," and his conclusion was simple: never fight an enemy who values victory more than survival. Meanwhile, in another part of the galaxy, a new alien confederation called the Jektar Unity observed human expansion with interest. Their military commander reviewed intelligence reports about humanity. These creatures defeated the Crithian Empire in 2 years, and how is that possible? "Unknown, sir," his analyst replied, "but we have intercepted Crithian military files about the war, and shall I summarize?" "Please." The analyst pulled up footage from the war, and images of Colonel Chen leading charges that should have been suicidal, and Captain Webb violating ceasefires, and human soldiers laughing while dying, and tactics that made no logical sense, but somehow worked. The Crithians had superior technology, and superior numbers, and superior tactical position, the analyst explained, but they lost because they could not sustain the casualty rates that humans considered acceptable. Acceptable casualties? The commander asked. "Sir, the humans lost 70% of their deployed forces, and considered it a victory because they achieved their strategic objectives, and the Crithians lost 30% of their forces, and sued for peace because they considered it unsustainable." The commander felt his confidence waver. "You are saying the humans are willing to die at rates we cannot match?" "Not just willing, sir," the analyst corrected, "eager, and they sent their most unstable warriors, and the ones who actively wanted to die in combat. And that is not a psychological profile we have counters for." The Jektar military commander looked at the star charts showing human expansion, and made a decision that would save his civilization. Update our first contact protocols, and if we encounter humans, we negotiate, and we trade, and we offer friendship, and under no circumstances do we threaten them. Sir, our military is superior to the Crithian Empire at its peak. I do not care, the commander said. The Crithians thought they were superior too, and now they pay tribute and accept foreign observers and teach their children to fear humanity, and I will not allow that to become our fate. He pulled up the final image from his intelligence file, and a picture of Colonel Sarah Chen, covered in blood and smiling like she had never been happier. That is not a soldier, he said quietly. That is a warning, and the humans do not send their best to war, and they send the ones who enjoy it, and I do not want to know what happens if they send their best. The analyst nodded. Recommendation confirmed, sir, and establish diplomatic relations with humanity, and avoid all military provocation, and treat them as dangerous allies rather than potential enemies. Agreed, the commander said, and make sure every ship captain knows, if you encounter humans, then you smile and you trade, and you do not under any circumstances give them a reason to send people like Colonel Chen. Back on Earth, Colonel Sarah Chen sat in a military psychiatric facility and stared out the window at a world she no longer fit into. General Hammond visited her quarterly. "How are you doing, Sarah?" "Bored," she replied, "and restless and angry, and all the things that made me useful in war and make me dangerous in peace." "The Jektar Unity just opened diplomatic channels," Hammond said. "They specifically requested that we not send any military personnel to the negotiations, and they mentioned you by name as someone they hope never to meet." Chen laughed. "We won so hard we scared an entire new civilization." "That was the goal," Hammond reminded her. "I know," Chen said, "but now what? I can't go back to normal life, and I can't stop thinking about the war, and I can't function in a world where people follow rules." Hammond had no answer, because he knew Chen was right, and she and Webb and all the others who fought that war were heroes who could never come home. "There's always another war," he said finally. "Yeah," Chen agreed, "there always is." The window, and somewhere in the galaxy, other species were learning the lesson the Crithians learned the hard way. A human did not send generals to war, and they sent psychopaths in military uniforms, and they sent the broken and the angry and the ones who had nothing to lose. And that was precisely what made them unbeatable.